I think I hate this more than Pet Sematary.
Really?
Yeah.
Oof.
So, hi guys.
Hi.
So, we're here to talk about Brightburn.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
I'm going to let you say your piece before I say mine, because I have a feeling mine's going to be much more strongly worded than yours.
You have feelings?
I just made a huge, long Twitter rant about this film.
Oh, I gotta check out your Twitter then.
Because, man, do I have some issues with this. And it's like, I don't know, just I'm overthinking it, or if it's, I think it's a little bit of both. Or
You're overthinking it.
Or it's a genuine issue with the coding.
The coding?
Yeah, I'll explain.
Okay.
Well, let's say your piece first.
I went into this, I think I did the right thing by just like taking a glance at some reviews before I went in. Mm-hmm. Not like the full reviews, but just like the blurbs on Metacritic. And one of the things that one person said that I think helped me approach this movie in a way that I enjoyed it more was, he said it's basically an 80s slasher fic.
Okay.
Fic. And that's basically how I went into this. I went into this expecting, like, I got this one tuft of hair that's being weird. Whatever. Okay.
Don't worry, it's fine.
Kitty! But I went into this basically expecting something akin to an 80s horror movie. And I pretty much got that. I was a little disappointed initially because of the way that the turn comes about. I mean, he gets his superpowers in a certain way that, puberty or whatever, but it comes from, like, the hidden spaceship that he arrived in, like, talking in demon voices to him.
Yeah.
And
to that
was definitely a thing where I was like, okay, sure. And he starts sleepwalking and not understanding what's happening, and that's one thing, but then it just starts kind of changing who he is as a person. And basically it just starts turning him evil. And
that's the
kind of had an issue with that because I was really expecting something more along the lines of like he snaps because of the bullies
or something
that were picking on him, some kind of school shooter narrative morphed into a superhero thing,
which could have worked in that context.
Yeah, and that would have been more predictable, but I think that it would have worked better in that sense. But I have mixed feelings about it because it's like I had these expectations for it to be that predictable, and it wasn't that predictable, and I still haven't decided whether or not that's like something I'm okay with or I like.
I'm not. That's honestly, you're kind of hitting where my biggest problem with this movie is.
Yeah. It had the chance to be a movie that was really about someone who is a good kid being warped into someone who is full of pain and anger and rage, and just that turns into something more, and he gets turned into someone who, is bad. And that could have been very compelling in its own way. I think that I would have really liked to see that movie, and I would really still like to see that movie.
If they went with that, I probably would have been much more. I'm much more lean on this film. That's the way they went.
But this movie pretty much takes the route of he gets practically possessed on a certain level, and then that starts integrating with his actual personality, and all of a sudden he's just evil and lying and all this stuff. And
even then, it's kind of hard to tell how much it actually changes him because we don't know a lot about him before that happens.
Well,
they got the occasional little montage of like, oh, look, they're playing.
I mean, he seemed to be a sweet enough kid. Like, he was picked on by the bullies at school for being, a dork and smart.
A bully.
And nerdy. Yeah, a bully.
Just one kid who shows up in like 3 scenes.
Yeah, and that kid... Why are bullies always overweight? In movies, I mean, like,
no, I get weird. That now.
But it's really this weird thing where this one kid makes fun of him a couple times, and his friends laugh with him. So you assume it's more than just that kid on a certain level. But it's definitely the level of sophistication in this movie is that of an 80s slasher film. So if you expect something more complex or deep or interesting or engaging on a character level than that, you're going to be disappointed.
Okay.
But if you go into it expecting an 80s style horror movie, you're pretty much going to get that. And as that, I feel like it did all right. It wasn't bad as far as a horror movie goes, but as far as a superhero movie that would explore morality and stuff, like, it just is not that. So I feel like it's unfair to try to gauge it on that level.
I can see where you're coming from on that. That being said, I think you do have to bring the superhero genre into a bit, because this movie is acting as a direct subversion of the Superman story. So, like, in a sense, yeah, you kind of have to take that consideration as well, because it's pretty blatantly like a Superman but evil story.
Yeah, absolutely. Where, Superman hits puberty and all of a sudden wants to wreck everything. I think one of the things about it is, I've also recently reread the entirety of Irredeemable. Did you ever read that?
Irredeemable? It's just called Irredeemable?
Irredeemable.
I have not heard that.
It's basically the story of Superman, a Superman-style superhero, who one day just seemingly, no one can figure out why initially, but seemingly he just snaps and murders like millions of people, and then starts hunting down his former colleagues from the not Justice League, and murdering them and their families. And it's this terrifying, horrific onslaught, and they're just desperately trying to figure out a way to stop this guy. But as you go through the story, it becomes a really fascinating, complex exploration of something like the Superman mythos.
Yeah, it's like, and you can do a subversion and do it well. It just depends on how you do it.
Yes.
And this is the case where, and this is where I had to get my soapbox a little bit. Yeah. And the fact that, like, what the movie does really wrong is, like, I don't know if this was intentional. I'm just going to give him a grain of salt and say no.
Yeah.
But honestly, I got a really strong anti-immigration message out of this movie. And let me explain why.
Oh. Okay.
Let me explain.
No. As soon as you said it and I thought about it, I was like, okay, if you're talking about, like, the things the dad says.
No, just the whole context of the movie in general.
Okay.
And again, let me explain this, because I had to explain to earlier. Somebody asked me about it on Twitter. I had to give it the huge, long thing on there. So I'm going to be regurgitating a lot of points from that.
Yeah.
Basically, when you really break this movie down, and this goes into the fact you have to know about the Superman's origin too.
Sure.
Where it's like Superman was created by sons of Jewish immigrants in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the creators' dad was shot pretty early on, pretty much killed right there when he was, I think, 7 or so. I could be wrong. Wow. And that led to the big part why Superman's bulletproof.
Yeah.
And all that. But anyway, basically the general coding for Superman at his inception, pretty much to this day, has been he is the shining beacon that an immigrant can go to America and become that country's ideal. And that's like a strong foundation of that character for a long, long time. Most filmmakers don't want to touch that, so that's why they should go the Jesus metaphor.
I've never had that part of the story as part of, like, what I consider Superman. Because for me, I understand the whole American ideal part, and that makes sense. But for me, the whole idea of Superman has always been a representation of America at its peak, in the sense that it is all powerful. It is the most powerful being in the world, and with that comes a lot of responsibility. And it's a question of, what do you do to stop people while still adhering to the ideals of, America?
And that's part of it too.
Yeah.
And that's part of it too.
That's the side of it that I'm more familiar with.
Yeah, but when you really look at his origin story and all that, he is literally an illegal alien that's raised by an American couple.
Yes.
In Kansas.
Yes.
And he grows up to become, like, the best America has to offer. Like, and that's pretty much, and again,
as undocumented as you can get.
As undocumented as you can get. Yeah. And again, the fact that made by Jewish immigrants makes that metaphor more poignant.
We got to build a wall over the sky in Canada. Just make America a dome.
Oh yeah, I'm glad to start somebody in Congress.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Well, get emergency funding to be great.
Anyway.
Topical. Anyway.
We'll just get rid of the educational system. Use that money.
Oh yeah, who needs children?
That'll cover like a fifth of it.
But anyway, anyway, so then you think that, so like every adaptation you make of Superman from that point on has to be really careful of not presenting the wrong message because of that coding. And like that's why a lot of Superman adaptations just don't talk about that. That's why they focus a lot on the Jesus metaphor stuff, because it's easier to do that than it is to go with the immigration stuff.
Yeah.
Which is understandable from a filmmaking standpoint.
I would say that given where these guys come from, because these people do not have a lot of credits to their name. These are not sophisticated filmmakers. The director is a horror movie director.
And I understand that. Like, that's I'm giving them a grain of salt and saying, like, I don't think they did this on purpose.
No, it's definitely not on purpose, but it's definitely this thing where it's like, I feel like the intent of the movie was, what if Superman as a kid was like bullied and stuff and he didn't want to be good, and we just took that idea and made it into like a horror movie.
And again, if you want to do that, I don't have a problem with the concept by itself. The concept is not what I have the problem with.
Yeah.
It's really the execution here that's a really big question mark here. And again, let me break it down a little bit and explain what I mean here. In the fact that this movie starts out, I mean, it starts out exactly the same as the Superman story does. Farmer couple in Kansas. Spaceship crashes down. They adopt the child. They raise him as their own. And then one day, as you mentioned before, the evil spaceship decides to mind warp him because
it's activated.
Metaphor for puberty, I guess.
Well, yeah, it was his 12th birthday.
Yeah, whatever the case, whatever that was. But
something like that.
Anyway, so and then after that point, he almost like they do the possession thing for a few scenes, and then he just kind of goes from almost snaps immediately towards serial killer tendencies, and it's almost kind of implied he had them before the spaceship kicked in.
Kind of.
But then like that's kind of left up to interpretation, because there's a
really
part
weird.
there's a part where like the
mattress.
the part where the parents find like these lingerie catalogs, but also like pictures of like bodily organs. Which he never talks about. So it never really makes sense why he would do that.
They start flipping through them.
Oh, he's just like, I guess that's what serial killers do. They have pictures of organs under their bed.
Yeah, it's like it starts with like, oh, girls in lingerie. Oh,
the human
anatomy graphs. Oh, close-up pictures of people's intestines from surgery. This is weird.
Yeah, so it's not really...
I was into some weird shit when he was a kid. It's fine. That was basically when I was like, okay, it's a horror movie. Like, I'm not going to expect a, like, deep conversation about character and all that. This is clearly following the beats of, you dumbasses are just going to let this happen. Okay.
But
especially the mom.
Again,
because he's always gonna be my baby.
And then
she did a decent job for it's Elizabeth Banks. She's not bad. You know, like she did a decent job for what she was given, but she wasn't given much.
Again, though, that's the thing. Like, up to that point, before he starts going serial killery, no one, like, outside that one random bully, no one is like mean to him.
No,
he has good parents.
That girl is super nice to him.
The girl is nice to him,
and
like he's called one of the smartest
immediately.
Kids. Like he's one of the smartest kids in the country. Like he said, like he's all he's going for him. There's nothing in his environment that you can really like use to support this. Oh, I'm gonna turn evil narrative.
Yeah.
So then this is where it gets troubling to me, is the fact that the only assumption you can make is that the illegal immigrant is just naturally evil because of where he comes from.
It's I don't know, man. I feel like it was just it's a lazy horror movie.
And
it's a lazy horror movie. It's just like, oh, this person just, he was picked on. It's a school shooter narrative.
But it's not, though.
No, it is.
Because like he's never really picked on.
It is poorly conveyed. But I'm saying that it's a badly made movie.
It is.
But it's at least in terms of the setup. Like the writing's not great. The setup, the plot, it's not great. It's decently directed, surprisingly.
I will give it that.
It's as a horror, coming from the perspective of a dude who's trying to make a horror movie, like I'd say he did a good job. In terms of being a director, the setup and the writing and everything, that's a different story. It's not good, but the way that it sets it up, I really thought it was more of a school shooter narrative, where it was like, hey, he's told that he has his whole future ahead of him and he's so smart, but that doesn't mean much to this kid because he's alone. At his birthday party, it was his parents and his aunt and uncle, and that was it. Like, he didn't have any friends. And
I caught that part. Like, that being said, though, there's not a whole lot to support the school shooting narrative, though.
that's it, though.
It's like just that he's like, but that never seems to bother him.
No, that's the thing. It doesn't seem to bother him that much, but it does seem to bother him.
It doesn't, though, because he never, like, again, it's never really conveyed.
It is. In the scene in the classroom when the kid laughs at him, he's like, "Ugh." And it's implied that he talks about stuff like that a lot, and they pick on him a lot because he says, "Why are you always talking about duh?" And then as it goes on to, he hits the point where he likes girls, and his dad tells him, like, you know, sometimes it's okay to go for it. And he means jerking off, whereas this kid just fucking super speeds his way over to the house of the girl he likes and basically chooses the creepiest fucking way possible to approach that.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that was a pretty well-made scene.
Like I said, like,
I like how that scene was made. That's what I'm saying, though. As a horror movie enthusiast, I enjoyed the beats that they set up, and like the whole thing with the laptop, I thought was really well done.
Like, that being said, do you see what I'm saying? Though?
I see what you're saying.
It's kind of a troubling.
I'm seeing what you're saying. What I'm saying is that you don't watch horror movies or enjoy them that much, and you're approaching this more from an actual character arc narrative as like a superhero movie, which this is not. It's not a superhero
Well, like,
movie.
regardless of the genre, if that's what the movie is telling you, then doesn't that kind of present a problem regardless of the genre it's in?
No, it's because horror movies are in and of themselves problematic. Horror movies are a weird creature unto themselves within film. It's movies where you are literally set up not necessarily to watch, you know, a protagonist overcome. You're literally these movies are literally set up to have you watch the main characters die. It has been like that, like, way back when. Initially, when you had things like classic monster movies and stuff, it was about a hero saving people from the monster. But when it got to the point where it was like in the 60s and 70s and stuff, you got to the point where it was about watching the monster kill people. And it was that thrill. And that's why when you had the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the twist ending of it, the crazy thing about it, like the thing that like blew people away, was at the very end of it, she escapes. That was a shock at that time, because normally they don't escape. And horror movies in and of themselves are, on a certain level, sadistic. You're there to watch terrible things happen. That's kind of the point, or at least to feel really uncomfortable. And I mean, that even goes over to something like Hereditary.
Except Hereditary had a point to make.
No, I understand. I understand. Yeah. But I'm saying, even when you're talking about really good examples of the genre that have excellent characters and excellent plotting and excellent everything, at its heart, horror movies are still about watching terrible things happen to the people you're rooting for.
But the thing is, like, I don't think there's like any case where aliens in movies are just aliens. They're always representative of something. Maybe not like a one-to-one comparison.
Not really.
Oh, like, okay, even like, say something as dumb as like Independence Day, for example, it's still like a reflection of the culture at the time.
Sure.
Like, pre-9/11.
If you want to talk about how the culture is reflected in the rhetoric, maybe. But I think this movie isn't deep enough to merit that kind of inspection. Because when you're talking about something where it's literally just a concept, where it's like, what if Superman as a kid was like, say you're thinking about school shooters where people are like, oh, you know, he was always such a nice boy, he was always so smart, you know, he seemed so sweet, but he was just alone all the time, and he was picked on sometimes. And someone's like, what if that's what happened to Superman? And they're just like, all right, well, let's make that into a horror movie. And that's, I seriously don't think the thought process was deeper than that.
I can see that. And then again, I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying they did it on purpose. Once again, it's more like, I hear where you're coming from. And from your perspective, it makes sense. I will give it that. That being said, and again, it just comes down to when you're going to try to subvert this kind of genre, you just need to be more careful. You got your fist clenched. All right, go ahead.
How did it take so long for me to convince you of what I saw wrong with Infinity War?
I conceded the point when we last talked about
Eventually, after months. Are you seeing what I mean?
And this is my point, my case of that.
Okay, but take this, put it on that, and fuck you. For fuck's sakes. If we're going to talk about subtext...
Hey, I gave you that point.
Eventually...
We talked about it exactly once.
No, we didn't.
I avoided the topic the other time.
No, we talked about it. God damn it, Michael. Oh my God.
Do you feel vindicated now?
No! I'm irritated with you. But, okay, so, anyway, you can look at it from... I don't want people to hear me. Do I have bad breath?
No, it's more like it's getting warm in here.
Oh, that's okay.
Do my side. There you go.
But it's the fact that I think that this movie is too dumb to like be considered on that level. I don't think that it is a consideration of them in terms of, you know, being an illegal alien. I think it's the whole idea of, you know, when aliens are in movies, yes, a lot of the times they're representative of something larger, much like zombies are in a lot of movies. Yeah. However, sometimes you just have a dumb fucking zombie movie. Mm-hmm. Where all of the subtext about zombies is not there. They're just like, hey, cool monster. And the opportunity to fucking murder things in a certain way. And that's why, like, when you're talking about things like this, you're literally just taking something where people were like, what if this was our monster? Mm-hmm. What if in our horror movie, our monster was someone who was as powerful as Superman? Mm. And it was a kid. And he just didn't know better. And that was it. And I really think that's it. It's not. You can talk about deeper subtext and everything, but I don't think that that's really an issue.
I think though, if you're gonna try to subvert a character like as well known and as well defined as Superman, to doing that, and like you have to be aware of what that means.
But you just said yourself that most people aren't aware of that subtext with Superman. Mm-hmm. Even me, as someone who initially didn't really care about Superman as a hero because I thought he was boring. He's all powerful and shit, and eventually was turned on by someone who was a huge Superman fan onto some of his better stories where it started talking about, you know, the responsibility that came with it and everything, and the fact that he does feel like an outsider and everything. But all that outsider stuff just felt like a natural progression of the storyline that he is an alien and he feels like a visitor, regardless of how much he is accepted and human, you know, on a certain level and has the human experience, he's still an alien. And he still feels that because he's still so drastically more powerful and different from everything else around him. I just felt like that was part of the narrative. But even with all of that, even with the deeper explorations I did of the Superman themes after that, it always came down to the fact it was less that he was an alien. Him being an alien was more of an explanation for why he had these powers. Mm-hmm. And once he landed here and he was raised as one of our own, and he is a human being pretty much in a nurtured kind of way, you know, nature versus nurture and all that. If we're talking about how that comes across to most people, you yourself just said that, you know, most filmmakers don't touch that part. They don't really talk about it. And, you know, there was a bit of that in Man of Steel, but generally it's not really explored within those films. No. So
Man of Steel was much more interested in the Jesus metaphor than the immigrant metaphor.
I feel like it still had a lot of things about him trying to learn how to be human, and then it got to the point where he had to make the choice at the end whether to be human or be, you know, with the Kryptonians. Yeah. And
that's true. I'll give you that.
So when it comes down to that, I feel like most people, if they haven't done the homework, if they're not huge fans of it, they're just like, hey, that's a cool thing.
Yeah, and that's a case where I'll be fair on that part too. Yeah. It's like a lot of stuff I don't expect a lot of people to pick up.
Exactly. And like, I feel like you're just...
So like, this is definitely one of those things that probably bothers me way more is going to bother anyone else.
Yeah,
and
I feel like you're going too deep on it. I feel like you need to step back and just look at it as a dumb horror movie with a dumb horror movie subversion of the Superman concept. And that's really all it is. You shouldn't look at this as a Superman concept or an exploration of that theme in any way, because they just took it as an idea and were like, let's make a horror movie out of it, not let's explore this concept. You know what I mean? So with that in mind, just looking at it as a horror movie, I'd say it's way better than Pet Sematary.
Production-wise, I will say it's better than, and like
As a horror film.
even as like story structure, I will say it's better.
Exactly.
I just personally had a much stronger emotional reaction to this idea of Pet Sematary.
Because
which
you have a
I
connection
will
to the-
concede from the get-go.
Yeah, it's you have a connection to the concept.
Yeah.
But if we're just talking about it as a horror movie, it is a better horror movie than Pet Sematary.
And I will agree with that. I think Pet
Better
Sematary,
characters.
debatable.
Better characters. At the very least, okay. Let's talk about the movie itself, like outside of the overall concepts of it. Like the experience of watching it, because my experience of watching it, aside from, a few initial things where like clearly there are points where the writers thought they were being clever, and you were like, I see what you did there, and the whole thing where, like early on, I remember he's working with his dad on something. Like they're building something out of wood, and he says, "Well, I must have done something right,
Because you turned out okay.
You turned out pretty
yuck.
good." And I was like, "Hey, he's gonna murder everybody." And then
foreshadowing.
yeah, and later on they said something like, he's just the sweetest kid. I can't imagine seeing anything. Like they have at least 3 times in the movie where they make that snide, like,
yeah,
he's not gonna be good, and we're gonna joke about it. But the main problem I had with the film was his interaction with the girl, because he
kind of just jumps right into like Silence of the Lambs territory. With
it goes straight from she's being sweet to him in class, and it goes like, instead of being interested at all in how sweet she is, it basically turns into like, this 12-year-old kid just wants to fuck.
Just like 3 steps away from put the lotion in the fucking basket.
Yeah, right. And he just sneaks into her room in the middle of the night and plays creepy music on her computer, and then like stands behind the curtain and the wind blows and you see his face for a second and she's like, ah! And understandably,
yeah.
And then he just disappears again. And sure, great. We're clearly setting him up to be a monster, which is why that's the thing about it. It was hard to be too critical of the movie when it was clear it wasn't interested in being a better movie. Like we've talked about this, like in terms of. Sometimes when I gauge a lot of the time when I gauge a movie, I have to look at what it was trying to do versus what it accomplishes. And if this was just trying to be a dumb horror movie, which it makes pretty clear from the start, it's not interested in you empathizing with this kid or being interested in him as a really complex thing. You are just watching this kid be creepier and weirder, and eventually...
I mean, that being said, though, there are a couple lines of dialogue that are particularly kind of questionable in terms of, they definitely kind of reinforce my own, personal thoughts.
What?
For example, who are those boys' real parents? I'm a drill mom. Oh, please, probably some, inbred, like the girl's mom.
Oh, yeah, no.
Like, it starts talking, the whole, oh, you're not a drill mom. You're, he's an adopted son, probably from some horrible place or whatever. And then there's the part where the dad goes, that's not our son. That's a thing. Yeah. And it's kind of like, you're not helping my opinion of you, movie.
No, I get that. And that's actually, that specific line was what I was thinking of when you started referring to the
It definitely reinforced some of my theories.
But I would say that, the mom being particularly, vitriolic about that, I can see, some people are just shitty people and saying some shitty things about, kids. Parents are assholes. You gotta remember, we a lot of the time we see moms and dads as normal moms and dads, but having interacted with plenty of my friends who are now also themselves moms and dads, they're the same shitheads they've always been. they're kind of more chilled out and sweeter, but I can totally see some mom who was that much of an asshole being willing to say, like, he's not even your real kid. You know, like, you don't even know where he came from. He's probably a fucking retard or something. Like, being that kind of gross person who would say that kind of shit about a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I can see that. And I've heard stories about parents who are like that. So that I can put aside. And the other thing is, when the dad says that shit later on, having, you know, picked up some little baby from some space pod in a field and feeling weird about it and getting to the point where you're like, this dude is probably murdering people and probably murdered, like, my brother-in-law last night. I'm gonna say,
I mean, again,
fuck this. That's not our kid. He's clearly turning into something else. And he's right. At that point, he's right.
in the context of what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, but even
Context is
ignoring
important.
the previous, like, doesn't that kind of sound like a bad adoption vibe a little bit? There's even the part, like, in the dream sequence the dad has, which also has a troubling imagery to me.
The dream sequence was big. I saw, like, because in my mind it was really funny to me, because I wanted to mention that, because leading up to that moment, there was definitely a whole part of my thought process, which was like, is this better or worse than Pet Sematary? And I was like, oh, this is doing it better. It's hitting those beats better. I'm liking the beats better. The child acting was definitely better. But
No argument here.
But when the dad wakes up and he looks at the door of his room and it's just leading out in the forest, I'm like, what the fuck? This is Pet Sematary. But
Oh no.
when they did that exact same visual for the dream sequence, I was like, why don't you just have him wake up in the woods? Like, that's how dreams work. Why does he have to wake up in his bed and get up and walk into the woods from his, like...
Their dreams are surprisingly sequential.
Have you guys had dreams before? Like,
I can't ride with the Ghost Rider. There's a block of cheese I need to fight.
yeah. And I honestly found it kind of hilarious when at the end of that dream sequence, because some of the jump scares they have in this movie are hilarious.
Oh yeah, there's a couple funny ones in there.
There was the moment at the end of the dream sequence when he looks at the baby and it's he's holding it in this little swaddle, and its eyes turn glowing red. And I was like, oh, that's unnerving, and they could have cut there. But then they have like a split second where it goes like, rah! Like jumps out at the camera, and you can see it has like sharp teeth and shit, and you're like, what the fuck was that? I thought that was pretty funny. Speaking of which, if we're talking about the scary, creepy parts, I respected the way they approached the gore in this movie.
The gore was good. I'll give it that.
It was well done,
Yeah.
and it wasn't excessive.
I don't know, the jaw part was kind of a little excessive.
Oh no, that was just really well done.
It was.
Well, because they didn't they only showed a shot of it for a couple of times. They didn't just have you sitting there watching him choke out while
true.
like his jaw hung up, like he covered his mouth.
This is true.
And I weirdly, with the fact that there are a couple of moments that, you know, are pretty gory, there was a surprising amount of restraint with it. The glass in the eyeball was honestly the part that I felt was the most gratuitous.
That was the part where I was like, nope, that's yeah, nope, not doing this.
And at the same time, like, it showed a couple close-ups of it to kind of give you the whole, oh god, that's bad. But they didn't do the whole excessive thing where, you know, she pulls it out and like it explodes out and it shows a close-up of like the goo coming out. And like, it doesn't show any of that shit. It just does that to establish what's happened. And the thing with the jaw, again, he covered it up a bit. I thought that scene was hilarious. I loved that scene.
Nope. I was already so pissed off at that point, though. I was like having none of it.
Dude, I loved it. I loved it because he definitely did the whole, oh, it's a skunk. A little skunky under the car.
Alright, yeah. It's good thing I rolled up the window. It's coming right this way.
He's coming right for us!
Oh my god! He's under the car.
Yeah, they're adorable though. But the thing with it is that there's the scene with the jaw, and then the other scene where he blasts the hole through the guy's head.
Yeah.
And that could have been a lot gorier.
It could.
It gets pretty intense for a minute because it shows it from the front when he starts doing it. But when he blasts all the way through, it shows it from the back. There's no extra time spent focusing on like the graphic nature of like a head with a hole through the middle of it. Like it doesn't it doesn't excessively sit on these details.
And that's why I'll give it credit when I say like I said, like objectively speaking, it is much better than Pet Sematary.
Yes.
Like without question.
Exactly. And that's my whole point. Like,
and that is something I will absolutely give 100%.
Okay.
When I say I didn't like I hates me more than Pet Sematary. That's strictly on a personal merit.
Yes, I understand that it comes from other things, but speaking objectively, for the sake of reviewing it,
objectively,
as a horror movie, it is a better movie.
I will give it that. Yes, and in that we agree.
Yeah,
I think a lot of like really my main issues is more like purely like subjective stuff and stuff that I acknowledge,
subtext.
like stuff that only I feel like people like me would see.
Yeah, most people are not going to catch the immigration.
And like, I guess my fear, like, and this kind of goes back to your fear of the Thanos stuff too, if we're going to use a comparison, is the fact that I guess my worry is that people are going to like pick this up like on a subconscious level, and this is a case where I've already kind of seen it.
But it's way less blatant.
This is true.
The Thanos stuff was in your fucking face. It was a theme of the movie.
Granted.
So I'm much more concerned about that than somebody being like,
I don't know. That being said, some of the language in the film does
this
like
school shooter kid in the middle of white bread ass fucking wherever the fuck.
Our son's a thing.
Arkansas.
Here's a dream sequence where the baby we find is an evil mutant.
It's a fucking
with
evil
the blonde hair,
baby.
blue eye mom who wants to say like, I just want to believe our son's okay. Our son is a monster. You, the blonde hair, blue eyed American, must stop the illegal immigrant baby.
She's
otherwise
literally
you doom us all with your ignorance.
No. I'm gonna chalk this up to another horror movie trope, which is fucking white people going and being like, oh, what's this? Like, literally, oh no, the cat's going for the skunk too. Okay.
We got a warp around here. Metaphor.
Are your vents closed?
Yeah, we're good.
But that really struck me as a whole thing of like, and I'm saying this as the kid of immigrants who's much more concerned about these issues.
Yeah, I know. And I'm saying this as a total white man.
No,
so
and
like,
I get that.
And my perspective is like, I can only say so much.
I'm just letting you know, coming from this side of things, it doesn't strike me as that big of a theme within the movie.
Fair enough.
But like, it's very much the whole idea of just sheltered white lady who thinks everything is going to be fine decides to go see what shook our whole house. Oh, here's this glowing red pod with like claws coming out of it, and there's a baby in it. Oh, look, it's so cute. God has answered my prayers and given me a baby. You fucking crazy bitch, put that back! What are you doing? This is the same thing as some fucking, like, no, that's a horror movie trope of dumb white people being like, oh, it'll be fine.
All right, calm down, Mike.
Oh, look, a baby.
Calm down, Mike Wazowski.
It's just
one step away from, put that thing back where it came from, or so help me.
It really is just this whole thing. It is this thing where they're like, oh, it'll be fine, and then later the dad's like, it's not fine, and she's like, how dare you put this on our son? He is a child. I know we found all this evidence, but I'm gonna just ignore all of it until it's literally shoved in my face, and I'm like, oh no, I guess my husband's dead now. Shit.
Yeah. I guess he takes over the world after this.
Yeah. But the last bit of gore that I really enjoyed is that final house assault. Final house assault sequence is actually really well done as a horror movie sequence. Mm-hmm. As a horror movie sequence, the whole I hate that they put it in the trailer.
Yeah.
Because I would have loved to have that moment just be pure surprise for me when the sheriff walks up and then just goes poof. But another example of gore they could have focused on, but were just sparing enough. And it was well done.
It was.
It was really well done gore. But when he just fucking decimates the sheriff and it pans to the left and there's that couple seconds that you didn't see in the trailer, which is just him splattering across the porch in pieces.
With the kid with his fucking Cthulhu mask.
It's fucking amazing. And of course the cop... I don't know what it is with cops in these movies where they're just like, oh, this thing's clearly like otherworldly, powerful, and terrifying. I'm gonna like...
Go in there with a shotgun, hope for the best.
Yeah, I'm gonna go in there with this gun and just, you know...
Improvise.
Figure this out. It'll be fine.
It'll be good.
But, yeah, when she's walking around the house like... and calling for backup and shit, I'm like, that's when you go.
Yeah. Like,
that's when you go.
Nope.
Just leave. Just leave. Just be like, sorry, lady, none of my business.
Nope.
I'll quit the force. I don't give a shit. I'm out.
Yeah, you can report about in the credits. I'm out.
I just watched my boss get fucking
splattered.
Jesus Christ. Get gibbed. Fucking all over the porch. And I'm just gonna... This is beyond my pay grade. Just gonna say. But her getting fucked up was actually really effective, and I appreciated that. Because you kind of see it happen in the background, and then she gets thrown into a room just basically crumpled heap, and just...
That's the part I thought that whole sequence was really kind of silly, because I just see in the background just like just CGI.
Yeah, no, it's just like... and you're like, oh no, I don't think she's okay. And it goes and dumps her for the camera. I'm like, oh no, I was right. And the whole... I love the idea of not being able to tell where he is because he's floating around. Mm-hmm. Like, there were just a couple moments in there that, as a horror movie fan, struck me as like, oh, that's cool. So that's a good idea in here.
And like I said, I think it takes from two very different perspectives. You're from the horror perspective, me as like looking at it as a Superman.
Exactly, but that's my whole point. I may have approached it more as a superhero movie if I had not gone in there initially and been like...
You have a lot of cats around here.
Yeah, it's surprising considering this complex doesn't allow cats, which sucks because I want a cat. But
I'm sure you could probably just leave a bowl out.
I don't want to mess with that. They're like cockroaches in the gardens and stuff if you're not careful.
Okay.
But yeah, it's this whole thing where like I said initially at the beginning of the movie, approach this like a horror movie. Mm-hmm. Approach it like a dumb 80s slasher flick, and you may be pleasantly surprised. If you approach it as a superhero movie that's meant to have some kind of nuance,
you're me.
Yeah, that's really it.
I mean, like I was just call. I don't even say I think it's a superhero movie. It's more just as a movie that's trying to subvert the Superman.
Skuggy.
It's back.
Yep.
Oh, motherfucker, where'd he go?
Under the car.
Again? I gotta like be careful when I'm pulling out here. I don't actually run over the skunk.
They run from shelter to shelter. I'm sure that when you start up your car, it'll freak them out enough.
All right, well, I'll deal with that when it happens.
We'll burn that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, you were saying.
Like that. I just think if you're looking at it strictly as a Superman subversion storyline, then it's not very good. I mean, granted, the movie itself is not very good, but it's more offensive if you look at it that way.
If you're
rather
looking
than
at it
as a straight horror movie,
if you're looking at it as a subversion of the Superman storyline with the intent of exploring that subversion as a philosophical theme, then yes. Because I was actually having a conversation with someone a couple weeks ago about the difference between DC and Marvel things, and I think the thing that I like about DC stuff so much is that their characters are more philosophically bent. At least when you come to the mainstays of like the universe.
No, I'd agree with that.
Like when you're talking about
Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman.
I mean, in Marvel, you generally have, they try not to kill people, sure. But when it comes past that, you really have characters who are more adaptable and more flawed and more human and kind of take situations as they come. Yeah. Whereas when you're talking about something like DC, you're talking about characters that have a very strict code. Like Batman, the whole idea of Batman is his code and what he has to do with that. And like the best Batman stories come from that. And so if you're going to try to approach this from that DC bent of, you know, what a lot of Superman comics are good for.
Dude, if you ever want some good books, I can like give you like a shit ton.
I think you've lent me one. I have it at home right now, but this old lady's trying to figure out what we're doing. She was literally like standing back there looking in the car, and I'm like, what? But if you're trying to get something out of it that, you know, is similar to what DC puts into it, you're not going to get that.
I gotta loan you Mr. Miracle. That one you'd really like.
Probably.
Yeah.
But I still need to read the Eternals. I know it's a Marvel, but still.
That one is Marvel. Like
a movie's coming.
I know.
So that'll be. I wanna.
The first openly gay lead, apparently.
Nice.
Yeah. Might be Hercules. Just kind of great.
But yeah, so I think that really sums it up.
No, I pretty much. I think we pretty much well established where you both stand on the subject.
Yeah,
so,
I think we're good.
But I think whatever you like, whatever side you're on, you'll get what you think put into it. I guess. If that makes sense. It
doesn't make sense to me.
It does not. Let me try that again.
Yeah. Approach it as a dumb horror movie,
how
and
you
you'll
see
get
this
that.
movie depends on what you're expecting going into it, I guess.
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much.
Or like
what kind
of movie you're expecting.
Don't expect a superhero movie, expect a horror movie.
I still stand by my points, but I could see where you're coming from as well.
Yes, because you're approaching it from the superhero side of things. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's my whole point. It's don't expect that. You will be disappointed. Expect a horror movie. You'll be okay.
And fucking hell, it could be worse. At least
could be way worse.
It's at least not an actual superhero movie that gigantically fucks up all the mythology behind it.
At least Snyder. It just does the whole.
Anyway,
no. At least it does the whole thing where it's like
that was a joke for you, buddy.
Yeah. At least it does the whole thing where, you know, it just has the general idea of like, that thing's an alien, super powerful, and apparently fucking wants to kill all of us. I no longer consider it my son. Instead of an overarching theme throughout the movie where they consistently are arguing with each other about like, he doesn't belong here. Like, that kind of shit. Like, it wasn't an overbearing bent, and which is why I'm more okay dismissing it. So
fair enough. I can respect that.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's about it. So like, I'm fucking catching up like crazy this week.
Let's do it.
Still gotta see Aladdin. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it either.
I've heard such mixed things about it.
I've got Matt on that one, so don't worry that one. I still gotta see A Dog's Journey.
I kind of feel like I should see Aladdin though, because
it's up to you. I'm not gonna force you.
Given the ethnic representation in it, like I was really looking forward to the number of actually brown people who were in it, as well as you know, Aladdin was one of the first movies I saw in theaters when I was a kid. And
some of my favorite Disney movies growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to watch that crappy TV show.
Do
you remember that?
Oh, I remember that.
I remember the intro song. There was like giant sledge monster at one point.
Do you remember the episode where like Jasmine started being turned into a Naga and they were trying to find the antidote? And
I kind of fucking do.
And Aladdin in the end like says like, if you aren't escaping it, I'm turning into one too. So he basically takes the curse onto himself as well.
Oh my god, I forgot about that part.
Of course they switch it back around at the very last second, but it's definitely a thing where it's like,
I remember like the weird rogues gallery they made for him.
Yeah.
They had a crossover with the Hercules show.
I remember that. Do you remember the direct-to-video sequels?
I do.
Yep.
I saw Return of Jafar when I was a kid. I never saw
with Homer Simpson as Aladdin, not as Genie.
As Genie, yeah.
But then Robin Williams came back for Alibaba and for Aladdin and the 40 Thieves.
No, Prince of Thieves. No, I think it was Prince of Thieves.
Well, it was Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. It was an adaptation of that. So they were integrating that into the story, so whatever. But anyway, Aladdin had a whole bunch of crazy shit about it before, but yeah.
And the Hercules.
Yeah, I'm still torn about it. Let me know when you're going to do the review, and I'll see if I'm up for subjecting myself to that before it happens.
All right, well, if you want to subject yourself to something probably just as bad, again, I still need someone to go see A Dog's Journey.
I don't want to, man.
I don't blame you.
Did you get the trailer for I went to see Detective Pikachu finally, and one of the trailers before it was like the race car dog.
I have not seen this.
Oh my god! Well, then I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm going to let you experience that trailer for yourself for the first time, because it'll probably be before Dog's Journey, considering
God.
they're the reason these fucking movies keep getting made. And I gotta tell you, as someone who is not a fan of any of these fucking dog movies, I love dogs, but fuck these dog movies, with like someone narrating who the dog's voice in the head, and it's so fucking ham-fisted and cheeseball and based on books that are not good and
but at least it does. I can say one positive thing about it. It does not have Josh Gad.
Sure, but I'll tell you this, as someone who has this perspective on these movies, this trailer was insulting.
Damn, okay.
This trailer is the worst of all of them so far.
Wow.
Holy shit.
I don't know, let's remember Rock Dog came out a couple years ago.
When you see it, you'll know what it is, and I want you to text me.
All right, text me the name of the movie. I'll check
No.
No, I have to
I
see
don't
it
remember the name of the movie.
Okay.
But when you see the trailer, you'll know what it is, because it's the one with the race car driver.
Okay. I look forward to it.
When you see it, you'll know.
All right.
You will know.
Okay.
There's no way you won't know. There's no other fucking dog movie with a race car driver.
Okay.
Oh my god.
The good news is the other movie I have to go see this week
So bad.
is Booksmart. That's another one I gotta go see this week.
I am down to see that. I'm openly interested in that.
That one, I know Laura's friend wants to go see that one, but I'm thinking of having her as a guest star.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if we can have a woman in the car to talk about it, I would absolutely think that's best.
Yeah, so that's the plan for that right now. So if you can go, I'll have to ask she's comfortable with because she's never done this kind of thing before, so I'll make sure she's comfortable.
Sure. I mean, I can sit in the back.
Yep.
Maybe we can use my car.
Yeah, the better alternative. And then Godzilla comes out on Friday.
Oh, I still need to see the first one.
You don't really need to.
Really?
Though. I mean, I liked it.
I want the context, and I heard it wasn't bad. So
I'm like on the minority that still really likes that movie, but I'm also like because
I haven't really heard many people not like that movie.
It's mostly because there's a lot more human stuff than there is Godzilla stuff, and the director.
Godzilla was always about the humans.
That's what I said.
Damn it, these fucking people.
That's what I said. I was like, oh, there's not a whole Godzilla. It's like, have you seen a Godzilla movie before?
Watch Pacific Rim, you asshole. Pacific Rim is great, but if that's what you're looking for, like, go see that instead of.
Then you probably like Godzilla fine.
Okay.
I think really.
But this one looks like more of that kind of movie.
From what I understand, there's a lot more monster in this one.
Exactly. It feels like more of that. So.
I think some of my favorite tweets about the new one is more like the original director of Godzilla 1 goes like, "Hey, what if Godzilla is a metaphor for like tsunamis? Makes you think, huh? Like Godzilla 2019. Yeah, but what if Godzilla just punched Ghidorah?"
I mean, because you know, there's an element of it where people are just like, let's just because the reason Pacific Rim Uprising happened was because people wanted that kind of dumb, big action shit. Fine, great, but Godzilla, doing a proper like Godzilla battle royale with all the fucking classic monsters.
Yeah, I can't fucking
with
wait.
modern fucking special effects.
Yeah.
And you know that Roland Emmerich sense of let's just destroy everything.
Yeah, I don't know if there's gonna be world left just based on the trailers.
No, they definitely have no qualms with decimating whole cities just for like the money shot in those trailers.
I have every single one of the fucking Godzilla movies. Like I watched them religiously as a kid.
Every single one?
I even tracked down the hard to find ones. Yeah, like
there were like 40 of those things.
Yeah.
No shit.
Most on VHS.
That's cool, dude. I never knew you were a Godzilla fan.
I'm a hardcore Godzilla fan,
That's
man.
badass.
I have them all in VHS. They're in my bookcase.
Do you have the Criterion remaster of the original?
No, I do not. I have the original on VHS.
Oh, dude. All right, you gotta come inside before you leave then and look at that.
Okay, I'm down.
But
yeah, like
did you see Shin Godzilla?
Yes, love that movie.
Okay, good. Because I've been meaning to see it.
No, that one's actually I love Godzilla movies, but they are cheesy as shit. Godzilla's like first one I would call like a legitimately great film. Yes. Because the way it plays up with the sociopolitics of Japan is actually really interesting.
I'm a huge Hideki Anno fan. Evangelion is one of my favorite things of fucking all time. Mm-hmm. So knowing he left the remakes that he was working on so that he can make Shin Godzilla and also recover because making Evangelion movies kind of destroys his brain. No, like when he made End of Eva to cap off the series originally, he was committed to a mental hospital for half a year afterwards.
Jesus, okay.
It broke his mind.
Jesus Christ.
And he started remaking them, and he made... It's supposed to be 4 movies, and the first one came out in 2007, the second one came out in 2009, the third one came out in 2012, and we're still waiting for the last one! Which has been frustrating.
Like, let me put it this way. I'm such a Godzilla fan. For my communications class in community college, I did my second presentation on the entire Godzilla franchise.
That's awesome.
Where I, like, studied each, like, generation and how everyone differentiates.
Was it like a paper you wrote? Or like
No, it was an in-class presentation. I had to go up there and talk in class about this.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, I'd be interested in reading that paper. I like reading deep dives from people who really fucking love something, you know?
Dude, you should watch my new editorial about The Vision.
Oh yeah, I've been meaning to. I saw that.
That's basically what that is.
That's cool. No, I remember I read that new
Tom King one.
I don't remember the writer, but it's The Vision where he tries to just have a like suburban family.
Yeah, it's about that story.
Yeah, no, that book is great.
Oh no, I like it.
God, it's so good.
It's all about that book. It's a deep dive into that story. So.
Oh, excellent. All right, I'm down then.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it.
Anyway, we're just nerding out now.
Yeah.
So you guys have a good night.
So I'll see you like probably in a day or so, guys. Take care. See you later.